when I watch content, when I watch media, when I watch any kind of video, or I read an article or I read a book, I'm constantly reading it for the information that's in it. But then as a marketing guy, I look at it to say, I wonder how that thing hooked me. And I wonder if there's a way for me to copy or use a piece of that in my own world, so that I could use that with my customers or prospects and things like that. Do you use the same effect of me from a marketing perspective, but from a performance perspective on people that you watch to pick up tips or little things from movies, being on stage,
Yeah, yeah,
etc.?
yeah. So I always, I always like, I always enjoy as an audience member and I always tell clients this, and even students I've had, that hello, my name is, and I'm going to tell you about this today, is not an effective attention getter. And if you really want people to be hooked into what it is that you're going to talk about, then you need to create, I'll say, a visceral experience for them so that they can feel it inside them and they want to listen to you. They want to hear the rest of the story, whatever it is. So, ways that you can do that are great attention getting tools are things like stories, or uh, a quote, a compelling quote of some kind. That, like, I've used one in the past, and I was supposed to be talking about with a group of people about how I had helped an organization that was a chapter of a local organization. I'd helped them. They kind of lost their mojo. They had gone from 30 people down to about 6, and they were really trying to rebuild their organization, and they felt really defeated. And so I was explaining to another group of people how I had helped them to turn their turn their situation around and rebuild their membership back up to it by that time that I was talking about it, from 6 back to about 25. And so I started that presentation by saying, I didn't get up and say, my name is Gary, and I'm going to tell you about this. They told me that it was my turn to go. And I got up and I said, Beverly Sills once said, there are no shortcuts to any place worth going. And then I asked if anybody knew who Beverly Sills was, and that most people did not. And I explained that she was an American opera singer, and that she had one of her big tasks that she wanted to complete was to bring opera to outside of the opera house and to be able to be viewed by people who didn't necessarily have $200 for a ticket to go to a performance at an opera house. And that there was no easy way to do that, and that there was no shortcut to making that happen, but that she persevered and made that happen over the course of many years, and brought that so that people were now, who didn't necessarily have the money to go to an opera house, they could see what opera was, and many of them may like it. So then I was able to transition that into how this chapter of this organization had rebuilt its membership from its 30 down to 6 back up to 25, and that it took about a couple of years. It was not a fast shortcut. If you're going to have quality members, it takes time. And so that analogy for them at the beginning of the presentation seemed to really help them to, the attention getters do things like they help you get in the space for what is going to be talked about. When you might have had an argument with someone before you got to the meeting, you might have had a traffic altercation, you who knows what happened. But those intros, the stories or the quotes, or perhaps an actual or rhetorical question, a startling statistic of some kind, those things get people into what you're going to be talking about now, and away from distractions that befell them before they even got into your session. So that's why they're a good idea.
And I think you actually have to hook them way more times than people probably give themselves credit to, right? So if we're changing the channel every 6 seconds, we have to be hooking them every 6 seconds. And so if you started a performance with, hello, my name is Zack Miller. Actually, let me do it in a really boring voice. Hello, My name is Zach Miller, and today I'm going to show you how to laugh. You're going to sit there and be like, this guy is a donkey. He's boring. I don't want to watch this. And you're already done with the performance of the day.
We're not going to laugh with you. We're going to laugh at you.
Oh man.
And
You're going to laugh at me?
Yeah.
That's so mean.
Or we'll do what we say in the South and we'll just say, bless his heart, right?
Oh, bless his heart.
But one of the most really almost life-changing things that I experienced was, Gary, and you were there. We happened to go to a meetup, and during that meetup, it was an open mic night for aspiring comedians
at the brewery. Yeah,
and the amount, and that is such a huge parallel to how comedians perfect their performance and what business people need to do to perfect their performance. But these comedians, there are a couple of things that stood out to me. Was one, the amount of support that the other comedians showed to whoever was on stage. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was the fact that these comedians they were going through this academy, but they had their notebooks in hand and they were recording themselves, and they would have to go back and they're just constantly tweaking that message because the timing is so important. Or if I tweak this word, then this would generate a laugh, or this didn't work, so I need to tweak it to try to generate that laugh. It was such an eye-opening experience for me. And just for those people that are in business, I check something like that out because it was just life-changing. And that's the same type of importance that you have to put on how you communicate as a business person.
Right. Right. And, a friend of ours, I think Adam Duncan, and and he spoke at my class a number of times at the business school here. And one thing he always talked about, his message was about how the similarities between the comedy club preparation and a business meeting preparation. And one of the things he always talked about was that, you want to be sure you don't have any distractions that are going on when you are on stage. And that when you look at those comedy clubs, they're very sparse. The lights are all shining on the performer. There are no distractions. He used an example of a bar with televisions everywhere around the bar and so many colors and so many distractions and something happening everywhere in the room that a comedy spot in that setting would not work. Where you go to the comedy club and everyone's focused on that one person and there's no distractions. So that's a thing that's why those comedians are looking at all their stuff and looking at their videos, and they're looking at not just how their material landed, they're also looking at, was there anything that I did that was a distraction? Is there anything that I did physically that distracted from the punchline? Was the timing, was it too long? Was it too short? And so I agree with you. Going to watch, understanding the pedagogy of what's happening at the comedy club and then watching it is invaluable experience.
And they have no slides.
What's that?
They have no slides.
They have no slides. And the other thing is, which Adam used to talk about, is that he and his buddy were bored out of their minds in some job they had at the beginning, and they would go down to Newport News to a comedy club and open mic night, and they would just get up and do their thing. And he said, oh my gosh, we bombed so many times and we learned so much from bombing. But I think a lot of people in this, when they're doing presentations and performances, and this goes back to something that you may have said earlier, Zach, is that, in addressing that, is that people, I think they try to be perfectionists about doing performances and presentations because they can't imagine what could happen if they weren't perfect. And I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I imagine that all of us are damaged from something that happened in our childhood. And when that feeling comes back because we didn't do as well as we wanted, then that trauma comes back. And so I think people are afraid of having that happen, where with Adam's advice was to go down to the comedy club and just get up there and fail a bunch of times. And I know Tim talks about this in entrepreneur studies, and that is fail and fail fast, fail often and fast. And you will have a much better product at the end rather than trying to make it perfect and refusing to try new things. I think it's Brene Brown who says, she's a shame and vulnerability researcher, and she says that the foundation of creativity and innovation is vulnerability. If you're not going to be vulnerable, it's going to be really hard to be creative and innovative, because when you're creative and innovative, you're going to fail. And if you're afraid of failing and not willing to be vulnerable, then you're in for a rough ride.
There's so much material out there that people can pick up on. It's just whether or not they're willing to act on the craft, if you will, right? I mean, just steal what a comedian is doing. Just literally take what we just talked about in the last 10 minutes and use that and realize how much notes people are taking for that 1 3-minute performance. I mean, it's incredible to look at why some people are so successful at the top of their game and the amount of time that they put into stuff like that. I mean, think about the Peyton Manning effect, where if you really think about it, Peyton Manning, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, people talk about him, sitting there watching game tape on the other 8 months out of the year when he's not playing, 18 hours a day, just constantly looking for these a tick on someone where someone might be moving just a little bit like that. They're looking just for little things, and that little thing could be that I don't like to use the word thing, but that little thing could be that opportunity that you were looking for to make it to that next step, to make it to the Super Bowl, to become the GOAT, whatever. And so